Hacker PittsBull biplane sold by Twisted Hobbies. Let's take a look at it. This is an awesome looking little plane, and I've got the power combo to go along with it. And here's everything out of the box. Check out these ailerons. They're actually larger than the wing. And no horizontal stabilizer, just a massive elevator. That should be awesome. Okay, first step, we'll go ahead and fold the control surfaces back and let that set for a while. That'll loosen up the hinges a little bit and they won't be so stiff. Here's all the small parts out of the bag, and you want to really be careful. Some of these tiny little parts here were stuck in between the Velcro. I thought they were missing at first, but it's all there. And I put some of these small parts in here so I don't lose them. Pretty easy for this stuff to get knocked off the bench. I'm going to use this little bag for the carbon fiber, kind of keep that separate. Just want to make sure you don't lose anything, so I like to keep everything in bags or containers. And here's the power combo. And the 4 Crack Series servos. Twisted Hobbies motor, Crack Series ESC. And I'm going to go ahead and use a lemon receiver with the stabilization. I really like these. Now we'll go ahead and glue the upper and lower wing halves together. Going to use goop for that. And we'll let that set up. We go and we locate the 4 aileron struts, and there's 4 cutouts on the wings. They're kind of hard to see, but remove these little tabs. Okay, all 4 cutouts are removed, and we're ready to install the aileron struts. All 4 aileron struts are glued in now, and use goop for that also. And now we take the carbon fiber rods that are all bundled together with tape and put them in the box here so we don't lose any of them. There's 2 of them that are flat stock. And these are the wing spars. There's a wing spar for the upper and lower wing, and we'll go ahead and put that in that groove and glue it in with goop. And I like to sand these flat stock rods a little bit before gluing them in. Just apply a thin bead along both faces of the flat stock and push it down into the wing, and then immediately wipe off the excess with a little paper towel here, just to keep the weight down. Let the glue dry. And we remove the aileron horns from the cutouts here. Test fit the horns into the lower wing and also the upper wing. Going to sand it a little bit with sandpaper and glue them in with goop. Separate these carbon fiber rods out by size, and there's 16 of them here that are 155 millimeters long, and those are for the aileron reinforcement rods. 4 groups of 4. There's little slots here that these go into the wing right there. Okay, all of the bracing rods for the ailerons are test fit. And we're going to go ahead and glue them in place here with some super glue at all the joints. And then I'm going to beef it up a little bit just with a little drop of goop in each spot there. Let that set up for a while. And now we get our elevator assembly parts all ready to go. And these cutouts are removed from the board here. And the large, thick, heavy rod here is the one that you want. And we get our pushrod guide parts ready to go. And we'll push on the clip. And now we install the elevator spar components, and it's really important to get this right. So the little ring pieces go in between those 2, and one on either side of the horn, another one over there, and like that. And we set the spar down into the elevator, and we make sure we got equal space over here and there as far as where the slot is. Okay, we've got everything spaced out pretty well, and we'll make sure everything is flush, proper spacing. Now I'm going to go ahead and CA the spar up to about here, and from here to here, and see how that works before we go any further. Okay, now we can remove the elevator assembly. Just set it aside over here, and we're going to glue the horn onto the rod there. Now we glue the horn onto the elevator rod. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and add some CA right in this area right here and along in here. Same thing on the right half. It's important not to get any CA in this area right here because these have to turn differently. So these surfaces right here and right here act as the bearings for the elevator. So I'm going to put a little bit of silicone lube on there, and just to kind of loosen it up a little bit and make sure that they're free and easily moved. Okay, so now I'm going to put some goop right on this surface, right around in here, and the same on the other side. I don't want to use CA because it's so thin. If it gets in here, it's going to create problems and stick. So we'll go ahead and do that and glue that onto the fuselage over here. And it's glued onto the fuselage, and we'll let the elevator set up a little bit. And now we locate the two longest carbon fiber rods we have right here. And we set it down onto the fuselage. We're going to put these carbon fiber rods down into the slot that's already cut on the horizontal part of the fuselage, there as well as over here. And then we'll glue it in. Just push them down in there as far as they'll go, and I'm going to go ahead and glue them in with CA. Just let that soak in and dry a little. Okay, now we take the lower half of the vertical part of the fuselage and we'll install it onto the horizontal component. And we just go ahead and test fit it on there, and I'm going to go ahead and glue it with goop and then make sure it's perpendicular. Just going to put a little bead right along all contact points, and that looks pretty good. And just want to make sure it's perfectly perpendicular all the way down. Now we locate the bracing rods and the landing gear rods. We've got 10 that are 130 millimeters. We've got 2 that are 155 and 2 that are 185. Those are the landing gear rods. Now we start installing the bracing rods. We start with 155 millimeter first, and then we'll continue down the fuselage. Okay, now we install 5 of the 130 millimeter long rods, and they're a little long. We'll have to trim them off later. Okay, all of the fuselage bracing rods are in. They're in place. Just test fit it. I want to make sure that the fuselage is perfectly perpendicular. Looks really good. I'm going to go ahead and glue that in place, and then we'll trim it afterwards. Now we remove the 2 landing gear guides from the cutout. Okay, we have the landing gear guides and the landing gear installed in the fuselage. Just test fit it for now, and we'll go ahead and glue it here in a minute. Okay, the glue's all set up on the bracing. Everything looks nice and straight. And we can flip it over and see how it looks on the top. It looks nice and flat, the top of the fuselage. And the elevator functions nice and easily. Now we can go ahead and trim off all the excess on the bracing. Excess is all trimmed off. Okay, we remove the 4 servo extension horns. We'll install 2 of the pushrod guides through the outer hole to give us maximum throws. We've got the servos, ESC, and motor hooked up to the receiver. We're going to go ahead and bind that. All of the trims are centered. The sub-trims are centered as well to 0. And the travel is set for 125% on all 4 controls. Okay, everything looks good. Now I'm going to go ahead and add the servo extension arms onto the servo arms, and I'm going to use a little bit of 30-minute epoxy and wrap them with thread. Okay, the arm extensions are ready to go. I'll trim the thread off later. The elevator and rudder servos are installed and connected them up to the receiver. Just want to make sure that everything is working properly here before I glue them in. The servos are just lightly glued with a little bit of goop in the corners there, so they can easily be removed. And same thing on this side. Now we take the 160 millimeter long fuselage flat stock spar, slide it down into the fuselage. Now we take the top half of the fuselage, the vertical part, and fit it onto the lower part. The test fit looks pretty good. It's a nice fit. Okay, that's looking straight down the fuselage, nice and perpendicular there. And looks pretty good from the back too. And I'll go ahead and glue the top half on using goop. Now we take the 2 longest rods. These will be our push rods for the elevator and rudder. We'll prepare the end of our push rods with the Z-bends as well as the heat shrink. We'll add a little goop there and then shrink the tubing around it, and that should do it. That looks pretty good. As soon as the goop sets up a little, we'll go ahead and apply some heat and shrink the tubing. Next, we remove the pushrod guides from the cutouts, 6 for each pushrod. Need to remove the servo arm in order to get it onto the pushrod, then go ahead and put the pushrod in and put the servo arm back on to the servo. Pushrod guides are all pushed into the fuselage, and we're going to go ahead and test it here. We'll go ahead and glue those push rods in. Just use a drop of CA on each guide, but just want to make sure it's real nice and straight. Now we prepare the wing struts using the flat stock carbon fiber. Just need to cut these open. We'll sand the carbon fiber and glue it and put the struts back together. Glued with goop, we'll let that dry a while. Remove the rudder control horn from the cutout. Sand it a little bit. Glue it in with goop. Check the backside, make sure it's not protruding into the hinge line. Rudder push rods are all installed, and I'll wait until the rudder is installed later to make sure before I glue them in. We install the rudder control rod guide on the top side. Now we can test fit the top wing onto the fuselage. Need to make a little slice in order for the carbon fiber to go in right in between these two slots. So you can see there's a little hole that I put in there with a little knife. Looks good, so I'm going to go ahead and glue that with goop, and we'll cut the carbon fiber off later. And we'll let the glue dry a little bit. We can start installing the wing bracing rods. There's 8 of them. Okay, I got 4 wing struts holding the upper wing on, and I measured from here to here and there to there. Got about 19 inches exactly on both of them so that there's no twist in the wing there. So that ensures that it's in line with the tail and that it's perpendicular to the fuselage. Also, we want to look at the wing and make sure that it's parallel with the elevator. So here's the struts for the right wing. I'm going to let that glue up overnight. And the left wing, right there and there. And attached to the side of the fuselage right there and there. Okay, we'll let that set up every night. Everything measures out true. Looks really good. Now we can install the wing struts. Now we install the lower wing, check for the alignment and glue it in place with goop. Now we install the aileron servos. I'll glue them in later. Now we'll assemble the 2 75mm long pushrod guides for the ailerons. Use goop and heat shrink. The aileron pushrods are installed, and I just like to test them out real quick. Now we install the last 2 pushrod guides on the tail end of the aileron horns. We got them installed. Now we prepare the last 2 rods, these are the slave rods between the 2 ailerons. Slave rods are installed between the ailerons. Now we install the 4 bracing rods for the lower wing. Lower wing brace rods are installed from there to here, and I need to cut off the excess carbon fiber sticking out of the lower wings. Now we glue on the rudder to the back of the fuselage, let that set up a while. We attach the push rod through the rudder horn. Now we get the parts ready to assemble the landing gear. Cut this. The landing gear is assembled like this. And we assemble the wheel pants next. And now we've got the wheel pants on. Just gooped everything together. Now we install the motor mount, and it's just gooped on. That looks pretty good. We'll install the 4 motor mount reinforcement rods. It's pretty hard to push these carbon fiber rods into the foam, and sharpening them really didn't help. So I just heated up a little paper clip here, not real hot, and just slowly pushed that in there to create a hole for the carbon fiber rods to fit, and that worked out well. The rods are in. Now we'll go ahead and screw on the motor. And the motor's all screwed into the mount. The motor, the ESC, and the receiver are all connected up. Everything looks good. Now we'll install the prop saber. Prop saber is installed, and the prop is all balanced now. It was off a little, and the prop is on. Okay, I've got everything trimmed out. Just going to go ahead and adjust the travel. This is the elevator. It's full up, full down. I can adjust more or less later. And here's the rudder. Full left, just almost touching the elevator. Full right. And here's the aileron. It's hitting the table, but you get an idea. Okay, I've got several flights on it now, and I adjusted the CG to about 210 millimeters from the very leading edge of the fuselage. And it just flies perfect like that, so I went ahead and did a cutout, and the battery's just a push fit in there. I'm running 450 milliamp hour 3-cell pack. Flies really good like that, plenty of power.